Yo, yo, yo. Today we're just gonna be big chillin'. Probably gonna watch a little bit of this guy because he's a secret negative utilitarian. And definitely a philist of sorts, if you really listen to what he says. But, we're gonna watch some of his jazz.
I want to begin this video by just explaining what motivated me to go vegan. I basically became aware of a large amount of suffering, and I realized there was something I could do to reduce that suffering. So now, as you know, I spend most of my time trying to make other people aware of the suffering so they can gain the motivation to make the same changes that I did. So I'm going to take the general argument I'm making for veganism and put it into formal logic. And you could go through this with me and ask yourself whether you agree with these premises. So number one, suffering is bad. Number two, we should try to reduce suffering if we can. Number three, it's obvious that farmed animals are suffering. If you agree with these premises, as I'm sure most of you will, then a logical conclusion would be we should try to reduce the suffering of farmed animals. So I talk about suffering quite a lot. In fact, my friends and my girlfriend often tell me that I talk about suffering far too much. And I often think it's quite difficult to comprehend just how bad suffering can be for an individual. For example, I have been to several animal vigils before, animal saves. If you're unfamiliar with what these are, essentially activists stand outside of a slaughterhouse, stop the trucks on the way in, and bear witness to the animals before they are killed. Now, there have been several times when I've seen the animals in the trucks, they've gone past, closed the doors, I can no longer see them,
Alex
and I
and
turn around to
Destiny?
my friend or
Wait,
whoever's
what do you
there
mean?
and just start chit-chatting as normal, as if there.
Alex and Destiny were having a beef? I'm curious now. Now I gotta look this up. You're talking about the one that was a little bit ago, like a couple weeks ago? Yeah, weeks ago? Okay, cool, cool. Yeah, I didn't watch all of it. I watched enough of it to know that it's bullshit. How are you today? I am doing A-okay. A-okay. I went out to eat with a couple friends, watched a movie, went fishing this morning with my dad. So today was a busy day. Went fishing, watched a movie, went out to eat for a friend at sushi, stuff like that. I couldn't really eat much at the sushi place. Just had like noodles basically and rice. But nonetheless, I did go to a sushi restaurant, so ate a lot of rice and noodles. Sounds like a good day. It was a pretty decent day. And now I'm live streaming it. It's midnight, so basically went a whole entire day of just big chilling and, now we're big chilling again. The fish I caught were not big chillin', they died. But now I guess they're permanently big chillin', so helping others big chill too.
There isn't a serious issue going on, as if behind those closed doors there isn't an immense amount of suffering going on. And my ability to do that, it makes me think that I'm not really fully comprehending how bad the situation is, how much this individual is suffering just a few meters away from me. So maybe we could just take a second to think about how we feel
Yo,
when we
there's a
suffer
fish shell.
intensely.
I hope they're there. Just
It
kidding.
can be the only
I
thing
hope they're not.
you can think
But if they
about at
are, I'm
times.
sorry, fishes. You could have redeemed
When we're
yourself,
experiencing
maybe.
suffering at its worst, it seems like it's completely taking up all of our awareness, all of our conscious experience. When we are suffering, at that moment, it can feel like the most important thing in the universe. So now let's think about an individual animal. Let's say a 6-month-old pig going into a gas chamber. So this animal is feeling sick from the journey to the slaughterhouse. They're feeling confused. They can smell
Same.
blood, so they're scared.
Oh,
And they're about to experience an intense amount of pain. For several seconds, they will scream in agony and thrash about in that gas chamber.
me all the time.
If we really, really think about what this experience is like, we care a lot. And we desperately want to see it end. We want to intervene and stop this from happening. Okay, so now I want to give you a thought experiment. And I totally understand how strange this hypothetical will sound to you at first.
I do like
But
the
please
thought
bear with me because I think you'll find it really interesting in the end. So let's imagine for a second that we had a world where rather than a man-made slaughterhouse, we had a slaughterhouse appearing naturally, organically. It grew out of the ground like a mushroom in a forest. And rather than a pig in the slaughterhouse, there was a deer. And this deer is going through exactly the same experiences that the pig went through. So the deer is feeling nauseous. The deer is scared and confused. And the deer is about to be thrashing around in that gas chamber, screaming, begging for mercy, and just hoping it will end. My question for you is this: would you still care about the suffering of this animal? Do you still want this suffering to stop? Do you want to stop this from happening? For me, the answer is yes. I absolutely care about this individual, and I really want their suffering to end. I don't want this to happen. To the animal, it makes no difference whether or not the slaughterhouse was produced by man or produced naturally. It makes no difference to their experience, their awareness of what's happening to them. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tweak this hypothetical a little bit and ask you the same questions. So now let's imagine that in this hypothetical world, the slaughterhouse is no longer there. The naturally occurring slaughterhouse is gone. We are just left with the deer suffering. They're in pain. They're screaming. They're confused. They miss their families.
Do they?
Would you still care
No,
about this deer?
do they?
Would you still want this deer's suffering to end? The interesting thing is, this last scenario is an accurate depiction of reality. We've got animals in the wild, and they're suffering, and the suffering is occurring naturally. We idolize nature, and for 99.9% of wild animals, their suffering is completely hidden from us, out of sight, out of mind. And likewise, 99.9% of farmed animals, their suffering is completely hidden from us as well. The reality is that there is an immense amount of suffering in the wild. And if we saw their suffering, we would care deeply about it. Now, I want to go back to the formal argument I made earlier. And again, you just come with me on this journey and ask yourself the same questions. So premise number 1, suffering is bad. Premise number 2, we should try to reduce suffering if we can. Premise number 3, it is obvious that wild animals are suffering. If you agree with these premises, then a logical conclusion would be that we should try to reduce wild animal suffering. If we care about the suffering of the individual, then surely we should care about all individuals, not just the ones
What do you
in
think
farms
about that,
and
Apple?
slaughterhouses.
You're a little more keen on logic than I am. Does that check out? Checks out to me, but I don't fucking know.
But also the ones suffering in nature. So we've talked about how bad suffering can be for the individual. But how big a problem is this? How many wild animals are there? It is estimated that the total number of wild land vertebrates is between 10 to the power of 11 and 10 to the power of 14. This is trillions of animals, quite possibly hundreds of trillions. And guys, this isn't even including fish. The total number of marine vertebrates is estimated to be at least 10 to the power of 13. Again, we are talking about trillions and trillions of wild animals being alive at any can. Premise number 3. It is obvious that wild animals are suffering. If you agree with these premises, then a logical conclusion would be that we should try to reduce wild animal suffering. If we care,
That's basically what he said. Does that make sense to you? I'm not entirely sure. Like, basically, we should try to reduce wild animal suffering if we can. In the conclusion, we should try to reduce animal suffering for the wild animals. I don't know. It makes sense to me, but I'm not sure if it checks out and logically. I haven't really taken logic, so who knows, man? Not me.
trillions of wild animals being alive at any given time. To put this number into perspective, the total number of livestock animals on Earth at any given
That
time
makes sense.
is around 10 billion. So the number of wild animals in existence right now is completely unfathomable. In order to understand what life is like for wild animals, it's useful to consider population dynamics. So the population of a species generally remains stable. This means that for every one animal that reaches sexual maturity, they will have an average of one offspring that also reaches sexual maturity. Now let's briefly consider reproductive strategies. So some animals have a very small number of children. Good examples include humans and other apes. So if you think about 2 adult humans, they will average 2 children who receive a lot of attention and get a lot of resources. Other animals who have less dependent babies have lots of offspring. We're talking hundreds or thousands of babies. And all animals exist somewhere on the spectrum. Examples of animals who have lots of offspring include turtles and
Same, my
fish
dude.
as well. Now, regardless
Same.
of the reproductive strategy used, the
People that
population
from
dynamics remain the
premise
same in
one,
that each
they
adult
deserve to get
individual
like a knife in
averages
the chest.
1 baby, making it to sexual maturity. And the most prevalent reproductive strategy by far is the one in which the animals have lots of offspring. So what is happening in nature? Well, let's say we've got 3 points in time. We'll call them point 1, point 2, and point 3. So at point 1, we have 2 individual adult animals. At point 2, we have lots of animals. They've had lots of babies. At point 3, we know because population dynamics remain stable, there are 2 individual animals remaining. What is happening between point 2 and point 3? The vast majority of animals are dying before they reach sexual maturity. It is a sad reality that for almost all animals, they are born and then die as babies. We are shown biased nature documentaries that paint this picture of beauty and wonder.
Yes, man. Human
In reality,
based.
babies are born en masse in nature and then die a gruesome death shortly after. Now, I totally understand the idea of potentially intervening with nature is probably going to be a controversial topic, which is why I wanted to make this section addressing some questions you may have. And these are questions that I too will have thought of when first considering the topic. The first question may be, is it really that bad? Surely you can't compare the suffering of wild animals with the suffering of farmed animals. Well, the vast majority of baby animals will die from being eaten alive. They'll die of starvation. They'll die of disease. The very small number of animals who make it to sexual maturity will live a life of struggle, fighting for a limited number of resources with fear of being attacked by predators, and will eventually die a gruesome death, either from starvation, from disease, or from being eaten alive. It would not be an exaggeration to describe this situation as a living hell. But wait, we're not causing all of the suffering to these wild animals. And surely we're only responsible for the suffering that we inflict. Well, imagine for a second that you're going on a walk and you see a baby bird fall out of a nest. This baby is very much vulnerable. She can't walk, she's blind, can't see, and will almost definitely die a gruesome death either from starvation or from being eaten alive. Now, all you need to do to prevent this suffering from happening is take 10 seconds out of your day to pick that baby up and put her back in the nest with her mother. Do you think you should do
Crush its
this?
skull.
In fact, would you think less of me if I walked past because I was too lazy to put the bird back?
Yeah, but I'd
I know I would
also
think less of myself.
feel like
We
you're
have to remember that to
making
the individual,
by putting
it
it
makes
back instead
no
of just killing
difference
it.
whether or not you personally caused their suffering. It makes no difference to their experience. I think we can agree that if we have influence over the life of an individual, we would rather they didn't suffer. When our pets get sick, we take them to the vet. As our
Exactly.
ability to influence the lives of
Happiness.
others grows larger, so too does our responsibility. If we should try to reduce the suffering of a dog who lives in our house, surely if there's a dog just outside your door, outside, with a broken leg, crying in pain, surely we should help them too. And as a society, we could be doing so much more for the suffering of wild animals than we currently are. But suffering in the wild is natural, and therefore we should just accept it. Well, just because something's natural, that doesn't make it good or desirable. Malaria is natural, and we wouldn't accept abstaining from prevention interventions because it occurs naturally. But this is absurd. We can't just police nature. Well, would we accept this statement if a natural disaster was about to cause a large amount of suffering and death to a large group of people? I think it's safe to say that we try to prevent the cruel reality of nature when the victims are human. You may also wonder, but surely there are bigger issues to worry about, bigger problems. Well, we need to consider what makes a pressing problem. I think it's fair to say that the size of the problem is important. And if we look at the size of this issue, there's a huge number of animals suffering. Another important point is the improvability of the problem. And I think it's fair to say that if you want to make a positive, significant difference in the world, you should pay your attention to areas that have been underfunded, under-resourced. This is one of the reasons that vegan activism appeals to me so much, is that there's not enough people working in this area to reduce this suffering and exploitation. But when it comes to wild animal suffering, there's barely anyone working in this area. It's got a huge scope for improvement. But what about rewilding and introducing natural predators to control populations? Isn't this something that vegans promote?
I don't know. I don't actually think I disagree, actually. I mean, I don't think most people believe that there is moral responsibility. I believe people think they should do what they believe is wrong. I mean, basically, I believe people do what they feel, essentially. If they feel something makes them upset, they react to it. Because I don't think people really have 50 to 70% of people don't have internal monologues. So that means they don't really have very strong or any cognitive empathy, really. They basically just rely solely on affective empathy. So when it comes down to it, I don't really think most people really think of themselves as moral agents. Really, I don't think that at all. I mean, from what I've experienced, most people at this point, I believe, are. I'm kind of. You would if you would asked me this a couple of years ago, I would have said yes, 100%, bro. But now I'm getting too nihilistic, bro. I hate people too much. My misanthropic mindset is just getting a little bit too there, man. I mean, at this point, I feel like people just do what makes them feel good, and they have like these intentionalist fucking bullshit like mindset stuff. Like I don't know, man. They don't really view things like they have a duty to do it, or if like there's any responsibility to do something. They just kind of look at like, oh yeah, I mean, I can do that, and it'll be a good thing if I did that, but like I don't have to, or like it would be a bad thing for me. Like a lot of people believe that there's like like for some reason people believe there's like a duty to like like not cause harm, but like there's they don't have to do things for other people. They'd want someone else to be responsible. Fair enough. I mean, I don't think you're wrong in regards to that. I think that makes sense. I just at the same time don't think they have think there's anything like objective or like really true about it, like outside of just like, oh, that's what I feel and that's what I wish, you know. Like I don't know, I guess like to me, you ought to do something, but for a lot of these people, it's like they don't see the ought. They're just like, ah, no, it'd be good for me to do it, and I wish someone else would do the same for me, but like I don't have to, you know. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, go fuck yourself, I guess. But that's basically how I think. Like most people look at this situation.
as an alternative to hunting. I think it would be useful to see how this sounds in a human context. So let's imagine a tribe of indigenous people, and their population is going out of control. This is creating huge issues for biodiversity. It's destroying habitats, and it's going to cause problems for other humans down the line. How would we feel about introducing an animal that is going to hunt them down and eat them alive? We would think this sounds
Hey
utterly
man,
barbaric. If
they hunt
introducing a predator to
baboon.
control the population of humans
Baboon hunt
seems
people.
utterly evil,
It
why
seems
would we think
natural
it's
to
an
me.
acceptable thing to
Yeah,
do
it's
to
true.
non-human animals? So you're saying you're going to kill all the lions? Well, look, I'm not saying we should kill anyone. And up to this point, I haven't been talking about specific interventions. But perhaps we could look at things like contraception as a way to reduce the number of predators in the wild. But guys, the truth is I don't have the solution. All I know is that this is a problem. And the more I look into this, the worse it gets. I don't have the solution. And that's exactly why we need to raise awareness about this issue. We need to get greater
He's
minds
not
than
an
mine
ethicist,
thinking
but
about this.
he's kind
And
of
we need to actually
ethicist,
acknowledge it as a problem
you know?
so that maybe one day we can find a solution. We
He's
may be
a
concerned with
he's a
biodiversity.
secret
A loss of
ethicist
biodiversity
sometime.
can cause problems for humans, big problems. And at the level of the species, genetic variation is important too. It can allow a species to handle changing environments. And by that I mean genetic variation in the species means that some individuals will be better suited to survive and reproduce. And natural and sexual selection will favor these individuals. However, as vegans, we value the suffering of the individual more so than the success of the species. Species is an abstract concept. As a concept, the species isn't sentient. Think about the fact that on a species level, it could be argued that chickens have benefited hugely from factory farming. There are more of them in the world.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's no karma or anything. So, like in that sense, yeah, there's nothing to stop us from doing things. But I still believe there's like an ought, like like the universe would be objectively better if like the experience on the whole had less pain in it. Like it's not like there's anything like to be like judging that on a cosmic level, but just like given the fact there's no like identities, it's just like different little vessels of pain, suffering, and pleasure if it exists. It seems to me that like just sum total would be better if it was less pain. But I don't know, man. I don't know how you. I don't know how you make people grasp that, man. I don't know how you make people. How people make people grasp that they ought to make pain be minimized, even if there is no karma. But yeah, as you said, that's probably why religion came about, was to compensate for the fact that people don't want to believe in ought. So they believe in, they're like, oh, if I get punished, then therefore, ooga booga, scary. I don't fucking know.
The gene level, this could be seen as a success. However, at the individual level, the chicken isn't doing very well at all. And that's what's more important to us. So we need to focus on the individual, not the species. But we'll only make things worse. Humans always make things worse. Well, actually, there have been a number of programs that have helped wild animals before. We have rescued wild animals from natural disasters. In Europe, we vaccinated foxes against rabies. And programs have successfully used contraception rather than hunting as a means of population control. And yes, of course, there are risks in intervening. But we have to look at the risks of both options. And the other option is to leave things alone, leave the situation as it currently is. Well, that would be a catastrophe beyond our wildest nightmares, because it is not even possible for me to do justice to how bad the current situation is for wild animals. It is awful. So the risks of not intervening are far greater than the risks of intervening. So what can we do as individuals about this issue? Well, we can raise awareness about wild animal suffering. We can talk about it in social and political conversations, and we can get intellectual circles to take this issue seriously so that researchers have this topic on their agenda. Influential people are directed by public discourse. So let's acknowledge this as the problem that it is now, so that when we do have the technology to make a significant difference to the lives of wild animals, the idea isn't just laughed at. Another thing we can do is focus on veganism. I guess it's a fair assumption to make that in a world where we don't even give animals their basic fundamental rights, not to be stabbed for burgers, in a world where we inflict this suffering needlessly, of course, this society isn't going to work hard towards reducing wild animal suffering. So let's try and get a more compassionate world for animals in general.
Well, Given psychological hedonism, the answer to that is yeah, pretty much. I mean, the only reason we do anything and believe anything really is because it makes us feel good to believe said thing and it makes sense to us and it's within our means of acceptability. So, yeah, I'd say given psychological hedonism, the reason we believe what we believe is because it makes us feel good to believe what we believe. And it's within our realm of acceptability to believe it because, uh, you know, it aligns with other things that make us feel good. So, I mean, there's probably that aspect of it, but I also think for me it's because like I'm a sadist. So, like, if I'm a sadist, I'm gonna value pain and negative light and being like, I want to inflict pain. So if I value pain already in that sense, then it's just basically understanding that, oh, if I think the heights of pleasure can be attained from inflicting pain, why shouldn't the heights of suffering also be from like heights of all things be from stemming from pain basically? If heights of pleasure can come from pain, then surely that opposite pain is pain. So if pleasure equals pain, pain can be translate to pleasure of another person because it's so intense and it's the most intense way to get pleasure, then surely pain is the most intense of all the sensations. And so basically, I just kind of became like understanding that pain is like really valuable in terms of like all things, like from a sadist point of view, from ethical point of view, from egoist point of view, whatever point of view. Buddhism says all life is suffering, so like entire Eastern religions, I don't know. I feel like we're being a little too hard on ourselves, given there's like an entire Eastern religion, like a literal entire continent is like a little life is suffering, bro. And, you know, the Bible's like has like an entire chapter. It's just like life is hevel, it's chasing the wind. The dead are better than the born, and the unborn are better than both of them. Given that like most religions say the life's shitty, I'm gonna say that like, life's pretty shitty, we're probably fairly justified in believing so. Because it would negatively affect your life, right? You don't inflict sadistic suffering on others because it would negatively affect your life, right? Yeah, it's basically the reason why I used to not inflict suffering on people is because of selfish reasons. Now it's mainly just because, ethical reasons. And how's it going, Eve? I think that's serious. Evie, Eva. I don't know how to pronounce her names. How's it going, Sprinkle? Yeah, we're just gonna say that. Yeah, how's it going? On a subjective level, of course. Those religions that come out to enforce moral objective standards, though, basically. Eve, bro. I don't. You'd have to. Fuck. I don't know what that means, bro. Uh, Eve. I guess it's like E, cause then the V would be there, and then E in the end silent, right? So it's just Eve. Yeah, it's just Eve. I don't know why I'm drinking wine, eating plums. Sprinkle sounds good. Awesome. I'm gonna call you a Sprinkle then. Um, Drinking wine and eating a plum. That sounds awesome. I love plums, and I do like myself some wine. I am drinking. Lord Almighty. Vodka with tang and some lemonade from yesterday, which I didn't drink it all yesterday because I got too plastered and I kind of just passed out. And I was like, I'm not drinking any more of this. I'm already too drunk and I have to wake up in like 5 hours. So I basically just didn't finish it, but now I'm gonna finish it right now. So I already drank like that much of it. So like I'm already like getting like probably like a shot in me. Adam and Eve, you dinker flip. Yo, man. There we go. That's a good way to say it. Adam and Eve. Okay, well, Eve's a pretty cool name. So, but we're gonna call Eve Sprinkle because Sprinkle just sounds awesome. It's a fun name, and yeah, Eve just started selling gum. Oh, Well, Sprinkle, do tell if you want. I mean, do tell if you want to tell. I mean, I don't feel pressure to tell us about your awesome night, but I mean, what made your night so awesome in particular? Was it like get like married or something? Yeah, win the lottery? Like what's going on? Molly plus BDSM? I'll do it. That sounds pretty damn good. Honestly, um, I mean, I wouldn't do Molly myself just because Molly a lot of times is cut. But and I'm like I'm a hoe for that pure shit. I want myself some nice ecstasy, the pure MDMA or MDA. I would be cool with either one. But BDSM, my dude, hey, my man, I'm totally into that as well. But unfortunately, no, I haven't got laid in so fucking long. It's not like anybody would actually wanna. Hey man, I'm still looking for someone to peg me, looking for a fine lass to peg me, but no one's apparently interested. It's tragedy, truly. I don't know what BDSM stands for. I know it's like bondage, domination, submission, something. Submissive or huh. Huh. What's the opposite of a sub? A dom? Okay. The what the fuck is M stand for? Masochist? Oh, BDSM, sadomaso. Ha ha ha. Ah, that makes sense. I'm an idiot. I know what BDSM is, but I don't know what the acronym stands for. There we go. Shows how much I know. But yeah, I mean, I like BDSM. I'm more of a sadist than a masochist, though I am a little bit of a masochist. Though, but when it comes to sub or dom, I'm a switch myself. I don't really care, man. I'm just basically in it for whoever. I have a hand. Men can take care of themselves pretty easily. So when it comes down to it, I'm basically just about like making the other person happy. But when it comes down to it, I don't have no one to make happy. I'm just gonna be sad forever. So yeah, which works for me. I don't mind. I mean, I don't mind being sad. It's the most counterintuitive sentence ever. Chin. They do excite me. Haha, hell. See, F-lists have the greatest community. We're just a bunch of weirdos. I love it. Is there a playlist for when doing museum? Is there a playlist for when doing BDSM on Molly? Yeah, man, it's indie rock. Just kidding. No, but like, I mean, you definitely don't want anything too hard rock, I imagine. Hard rock probably won't vibe on. Well, maybe it would. I don't know. MDMA is not as psychedelic as MDA, but a lot of times Molly is MDA, and that's pretty psychedelic a little bit. So I imagine you wouldn't want to listen to hard rock on MDA, but MDMA maybe. You played a sexy song, forgot what it was. Sorry. Ha. Probably something like fucking my favorite sexy song. Such a meme. I love this song though. It's just so fucking makes me laugh. I'm like ha 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 ha. Where is it though? It's Clockwork Orange, not Mild Orange. Y'all ever listened to this song before? Of course you have. Everybody's listened to this song. We're getting remember me. We're making love. Dude, I fucking love that song. Uh, right, it's like metal seems fitting for BSM, but not when you're on drugs. What the fuck is this? You've never heard that song before? My god. Okay. Yeah, fuck. I don't give a shit if this stream gets taken down for copyright strike. I'm going and playing Mild Orange. I have it on times two speed. Well, times 1.5, don't I? Yeah, 1.5. So again, me no started. Fuck.
Looking for some feeling, but you've been looking other way. Yeah, I've been holding for some time now. You've been going astray. Yeah, I've been holding on for way too long. Trying to something more, holding on forever. Or to learn.
I said fuck this because I saw the comments and stuff happen. I was like, God, I always do this to myself. Mhm. What happened? Oh, it was just I forgot to put the
Yeah,
music.
you've been on a different wavelength, and I just don't
Oh,
know
that's the love making
what to
music.
do.
Oh yeah,
But every
it's
time
love
I
making
see
music.
you, yeah, you're getting me all confused. Yeah, I've been trying this for way too long, trying to solve it all, been holding on forever, but to learn.
Um, yeah. Song's so great. I love it. I can see you getting
It
texted.
seems some
Yo,
things don't
man,
change,
low key,
and I don't know why.
kind of low key sent it with one of the well, two different girls this week actually. Sent it with two different people this week, and one of them low key was just like, "Yo, hey, want to peg?"
But
They're
every
like,
time I see
just
you,
to brush
girl,
it off, and I was like, "God fucking damn it." Moral of the story is they did not want to peg. I don't think. Maybe they do, but they're just trying to brush it off
cause
and
you've
move
been
on
on
their own.
another
Yeah, my book
wavelength.
old,
But I've been looking for some feeling,
old name getting fixed. Yeah.
cause I've been waiting for you.
Oh, that's okay, Apple. I was just talking about getting. I'm just. Uh, no, I was just talking about full sending it with a couple people this week, and one of them was just like, "Yo, pegging, yay, nay," and I think it's nay, but it might be a yay. Who really knows? The person's boyfriend was in the room, and I don't think they really were like, "Yo, how about that?" So who knows, man? I'm kind of a little bit too bold for my own good sometimes. sometimes you just gotta be bold, why not? You can't you should definitely go to Russia and get pegged though. Oh, I hear Russia out of nowhere. Oh, I heard Russia. No, 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 no. No, I'm rushing to get pegged again. No, I'm just kidding. Now we're gonna play some what would be some BDSM music. Yeah, this is some BDSM music right here. Just kidding. BDSM. I don't know. I guess what type of music is BDSM? Like what type of vibe is BDSM? I don't really have anything in my playlist that's BDSM. Like the closest I could think of is like this. This is like club music. Club music like this. This isn't getting pegged music. I mean, maybe it's getting pegged music. I mean, what's getting pegged music? I'm not entirely sure.
If anything like this ever struck you, if ever a likeness had you scraping apart.
The gay friend wants to know if BDSM questions are cool. Just kidding. I'm not. I'm gonna keep calling you gay though. It's hilarious. I'm sorry. I don't know if you're actually gay.
So that whatever you like when you came in, whatever you use, whatever you choose, whatever your acronym.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Decide that either you're out
After
or
y'all
you're in,
in
or
or
you
done.
decide that either you're out or you'll swim, and you're. You started what will sound, a speech on how you moved around. And you tell them all so well, I had them memorized. You brought us all to tears, there's the ground and there's your feet. And never the two shall meet.
They say that either you're out or you're in. No, no, no. I just called Apple. So here. Okay. So is there a fear involved in the experience? So I'm not sure if I should put that on the screen, but we're pretty comfortable with things here. No, I'm not going to. So basically, the question is, do you think that certain things that are fetish based, especially involved in BDSM, are based off of like repressed things from childhood, such as uh, abusive tonations or physical violence or verbal violence, stuff like that? Do you think it's like reflection upon such things? That's the topic. I think in certain cases it could be, in certain cases it could be something different. Like it could be the opposite. I think it's either you're. My personal experience is like either you're like I'm a sadist and a masochist, but I haven't really had much physical abuse of any sort in my life. So I can't really say that my masochism and sadism comes from anything from my childhood, really. But I don't really remember much of my childhood, so who knows? So, but I'd like to hear Eve's opinion, I guess. Sprinkle. mine is basically, I think, a lot of stuff like rape fetishes, where it's like, like I want, like someone fantasizes about getting raped. I feel like a lot of times that comes from sexual trauma, but it can also come from like a sense of like, if you want to hurt other people, maybe you want to get hurt as well. Who knows? So who knows? But I'd like to hear what I'd like to hear what Eve have to say. If Eve is comfortable with talking about this. If Eve's not comfortable, then don't mention. Just be like, "Yo, man, I'm not comfortable talking about this." Bing, bang, boom. We all understand here. I think she left already. No, it's fair. Yeah, we scared her off. No, I'm kidding. Then she has a very long comment on the subject. I don't really know. Find out. Kind of reload my drink. I'm doing my back. Haven't done my back yet today for the red light therapy. Did my front earlier. We're just gonna do. Understandable. I have no fear of letting him do anything to me, but only because I probably don't care if I have to live or die. Understandable. Do you think? I'm curious. Does he do things because he has sadism issues or non-issues, depending how you were to look at it, I guess? Or is it more of like masochism on your end? He's fulfilling requests, or a bit of both? And yeah, I guess, do you think it's healthy or not healthy, and why? Because I've never really engaged much with that. And I've always viewed my sadomasochism as kind of like a fucked up thing about myself, like something that's not very cash money. But I'm not really harming anybody, so it's not like it's that bad or bad at all in any sense. But I do view it as a fucked up psychology that I have. So I'm curious how you perceive your relationship and or your own mind, if you are comfortable talking about that. Yeah, I guess people can be born with sadomasochistic tendencies, so it's not all environmental. Yeah, basically that's me. I'm just born with sadomasochism for no reason. So genetics are a bitch. My boy Rita made a depressed rant, and he released it exactly 10 minutes ago. I'm gonna watch that in a little bit, but I'm not gonna watch it on the live stream just because I want other people to watch it, because I like Rita's content. So I'm just pointing out that Rita made a video. Hashtag go watch Rita's. Love him. Hey, jerking to something, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm jerking to this because of... Fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, hey man, I can't deny that, you gotta use that MILF hentai. There's like I'm just saying there's some quality stuff. No, but we're when it comes to the Freudian stuff, we're gonna say that like Freud, you brilliant bastard, stop being an asshole and making us hate ourselves. Yeah, I saw his title for his kill where he just kicks over a shopping cart. Yeah, it was hilarious. And now he's just going around kicking over shopping carts. He kicked like 3 over in one day. He's got a triple. It's pretty impressive, honestly. Hey man, I haven't been whipped, so I wouldn't know, but I approve. I mean, I approve. So when it comes down to it, so long as you're not permanently disfiguring your body, no harm, And I mean, so long as you're getting pleasure from it, aka relieving tension in your body through like sexual frustration, aka basically relieving sexual pains and frustrations via taking on physical pain, aka relieving emotional pain and stuff. Hey, if you can do that, all the power to you. That's what I say. So I'm all for that. You do you, and if it helps, it helps. It's not hurting anybody else. And, your partner probably gets a nut out of it. So, when it comes down to it, it's a win win. Two birds, one stone, symbiotic mutual relationship. I'm all supportive of it. You do you, Ava. Eve. I don't like when I'm saying Ava. You do you, Eve Sprinkle. You sound like you got yourself handled and understand what you want. Rita is a real G, by the way, yeah. All anybody watching this and is just like, this is a weird conversation. Hey, if you like weird conversations, subscribe to Rita McLeod. He has a lot of weird conversations also, and they're usually pretty based. So, based and Rita pilled, based and schizopilled. I don't know. Based and antipsychotic. I don't know. It's too drifty in here. It's too drafty. Oh, I know what you're talking about. Where like you need to like crack your jaw, so you just like grab your lower, like you just like go like this, and you're like just rip your jaw open a little bit, just crack that shit, and you're just like pain. Yeah, I know what you're talking about, man. Oh wait, maybe I don't. Maybe we're not on the same page. but sometimes I know what you're talking about. Hey man, I used to slit my own wrist and jerk off using my blood as lubricant, so I completely understand. Pain is pretty great, but when it comes down to it, I left a scar on my body at one point, and I was like, no more into that. My body's too beautiful, can't scar this perfection. So, oh, you push it. Ah, this is a little bit wild, bro. You actually put like a penny. Why would you do that? I mean, I already have a tooth gap. I don't need to do that. See, look at that. It's gonna whistle for my tooth. So I already got a tooth gap. So I don't need no pennies being shoved in between there. But I appreciate it. We're just gonna brush past that little rant I had. Clenched my teeth all the time while on Molly. No, that's fair. Molly and all psychedelics and stuff like that will make you have like tension in your body. DPT makes my whole body tense up and constantly like have like muscle spasms and shit like that. Psychedelics are wacky. Drugs are wacky in general. I'll be right back. Y'all come, can just big chill, top off on drinks, do whatever you want. I'm gonna be right back. Oh yeah. We're talking about interesting stuff. What is? But vanilla six is on Molly, but amazing. Blood should not be lube, but you can make it be lube if you want. It's not the best form of lube because it kind of coagulates, but you know it's still kinky. In terms of MDMA, I also have never had it. Still on my bucket list. Gonna have it someday though. I'm not. Yeah, just like cut a little bit across and just use it a little bit. I mean, wasn't enough, but you know, use a little water, use a little blood, get a little mixture going, get yourself a nice little cocktail lube sandwich of ubu-ness. Kinky. My boy, you prepared? Nah, bro. Nah, just like have like a little bowl of water, you know, like just like cup my wrist and then you know like yeah, just water in my hand, just kind of mix it in there. Just like, wow. It's like being on a period, but like with liver. Wait. Thank you, I appreciate it. Most people say I look gay and sound gay, so I appreciate the fact that I don't sound gay and apparently look handsome, so I'll take it. Seeing as how I've been single for like fucking 7 years now, it's been a while. This is bean paste, 10 out of 10. Good shit. People people kind of diss on me for only having a diet of basically bean paste, but beans taste amazing, guys. I don't know what y'all are on about. Beans taste really good. I basically exclusively get protein from beans at this point. It's pretty much it's pretty great. I don't know what is wrong with me. Love beans. This white man eating beans. boy. Hmm. Fucking A, man. The anti-Nielsen informant's still doing a little rant on bullshit about toxins and plants and stuff like that, as if for some reason primordialism doesn't apply. And he literally has not addressed the fact that I keep on saying his arguments are kind of invalid because of primordialism. But because if you really want to prioritize yourself above animals, you may as well just, goodbye. So, I mean, that's kind of how I look at it, but I mean, whatever, man. Like, you do you. If you want to keep on making excuses for causing unnecessary harm, go for it, bro. I mean, it's just more, more power to you. More power to you. Mm-mm-mm. What is reality of Kane B? I don't know. I kind of want to watch that, but I kind of don't want to watch that, man. 30 minutes of what is reality? Oh shit! Yeah,
The principle is the same. Which
we
is
haven't
if
finished this video yet. We got like halfway. I She said turning me so I don't have the ability to turn people on, my dude. I don't have that ability. Not in my skill set. I mean, only have had sex once in my life, and pretty sure. I mean, to be fair, I didn't finish either. But more of the story is, don't think I'm much of a people pleaser. So, but when it comes down to it, uh, hey, I'll if I am turning you on, congratulations. I'm glad that I'm being of service. I'm glad.
it's not going to cause net suffering, or even if it's probably not going to do so because we know that for sure, then I think there's a strong argument to be made that we should be morally in favour.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think that would be something we could all agree on, at
Hey,
least theoretically, that we should if we
Eve is
can.
in a relationship. I'm not gonna be an alpha male because Eve's in a relationship, so there's no point of me being flirtatious. She's just being complimentary. How are you gonna be pegged with that attitude? Hey man, how am I gonna get pegged with that attitude? Because pegging is inherently a submissive move. So I mean, I'm pretty much already doing the sub attitude. So I mean, I think I'm already pretty much bent over uwu. So I mean, at this point, oh, you're single? Well, how's it going, Eve? Yo, just kidding. Unless if you're in Wisconsin, then yo. Otherwise, I don't really do long-term relationships. Long distance relationships. It doesn't. I don't think it'll work out. Just sounds too difficult. Plus, the last time I did a long distance thing of any sort, which was one way, I'm just saying we all know how that worked out. Am I right, Apple? Person is now dead, and I have clinical depression times 100. So I'm just gonna stick to not having relationships that are really shaky and like international and or like cross country. So, but nonetheless, fuck yeah, I'm glad you're single and able to mingle. I don't want an ideal long distance relationship either. Yeah, exactly. So it's just like, hey man, if you're in Wisconsin or in some place that's warm. What are your priorities? Hey, Apple, I don't. Eve probably lives nowhere near the Midwest. I mean, Wisconsin's a shithole. Eve seems to have a personality, so I highly doubt she's from Wisconsin. So we just have alcohol and depression here. She seems to have her shit together a little bit. So when it comes down to it, you know, Hey, Eve, if if Eve gives me European, yeah, she gives off Euro vibes. So, but hey, if you ever come to the United States and you're visiting Wisconsin, and what's up? In South Carolina right now? Oh, fair enough. Yeah, if I ever go to South Carolina, what's up? Just kidding. But yeah, we're gonna watch some video on animal ethics. We're gonna finish this video out and watch it. Got halfway through yesterday or a couple days ago, but we didn't finish it. So we're gonna do that today. Well, tonight, this fine 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, but I've
Yeah,
learned that there's no issue
shut up,
that everybody
Alex.
can
Love you.
completely agree on all the time. Even and it seems that oftentimes it's like the more obvious an issue is, the more there seems to be a divide on it.
So another issue is more relating to a specific intervention. So I think I've talked briefly about the idea of reducing the number of our selected species. So this could mean something like contraception or sterilization or something like that.
Of human beings, you mean?
Of animals.
Oh, right. Oh, you say our selected.
Are selected.
Oh.
The reproductive strategy where animals have lots of different babies.
Cuts.
That's our selection.
Oh yeah. No, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So
yeah, because you can either reproduce by having like few children looking after them, or having many children,
and not giving them much attention. Yeah, and turtles would be a case of the latter there.
Yes.
But people.
So I thought you said our selection.
No.
Our species. I thought you were talking about sterilizing
people. Not there yet.
Yeah.
A few more minutes maybe. So people have an issue with contraception, controlling the population of animals because they can't consent.
Yeah. It's like I don't think they consent. Like the baby animal that is born and knows nothing but suffering and death also doesn't consent to that. So, like, what would you consent to if you were behind John Rawls's veil of ignorance and you had to choose whether to be born and suffer and die immediately or not be born in the first place? I think you maybe would consent to the latter. Like, we should be allowing animals to live lives which are preferable, but for life to be actually preferable isn't necessarily for it to be what is preferred by the animal, because they might not know best. It's what would actually be preferable did they know all the facts. And I think that for a lot of animals that haven't been born yet, in the kind of anti-natalist spirit almost, but to not quite to the same, because that requires a different assumption. But just going off the assumption of like balancing pleasure against pain, not considering that
Guarantee says the N-word.
yeah, you can make an argument that actually you would rather rationally not be born at all. And perhaps that's it. And again, we might be wrong about this. Like maybe we should be taking it into account and saying it is unfair to kind of take that agency away from an animal to reproduce or to be born. But just consider that they don't consent to anything that happens to them, and they certainly don't consent to the suffering that we're trying to prevent, right?
Exactly.
Again, I haven't thought much about the idea of sterilizing animals, but it's like people do it to their dogs.
Right.
And
we don't see sterilizing.
I feel like sterilization. I agree with Mendham. It's just useless. They're gonna die no matter what. A horrible death.
Do you think
you
that
may as well
difference
just
could be
kill them.
related to
But
the animal's
that's just
capacity
my
to
opinion.
understand what's happening?
Absolutely, but it has to be, doesn't it? Because like if a human being wants to get sterilized, then we let them and we say like, yeah, that's fine. But we recognize immediately that they're doing that knowing what it's like.
When you go to sterilize them, you're gonna put them
Like,
under
they know that
anyways,
so
they're
they
not
know
gonna
what's
be
involved.
they're gonna be
Like you say,
asleep.
the reason why we
You just want
sterilize
them to not wake
like
up.
a dog or something is precisely because they don't know and they can't consent to what might result. They can't consent to having a child or whatever because they might not understand that's what's going to happen. I do think that's probably the difference there. Is like we understand what it means to be sterilized and they don't. But again, like maybe someone could make a good argument that says that we really shouldn't be doing this to animals, and like fair enough, but like be consistent about it. Again, like if we were okay with doing it to dogs and cats for our own sake because we don't want them, having some kid that we have to deal with or whatever. Like the same should apply elsewhere, I think. Again, like I'm always just looking for consistency, right? And maybe there is a relevant difference between like sterilizing a pet dog and sterilizing some turtles, but again, that might be there, and I'd be all ears to hear it. But as far as I can see, it's like it's not something that we should at least just immediately reject out of kind of like, oh, that seems like a weird thing to do.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, look at it from the victim's perspective. You know, would you rather be suffering and only know suffering, net suffering, or never have been born in the first place? It's the same thing I ask of people who are worried about cows going extinct if we go vegan, which wouldn't happen, but they're like, you know, cows are going to go extinct. And I say, like, look, I'd rather be extinct than on a factory farm. I'd rather be dead than a cow on a factory farm. I think the same thing kind of applies here.
Sure.
It's the same way what we say, let's stop breeding animals to be eaten. Like, let's stop. That's essentially like, although it's not sterilization, it's kind of the same effect. It's like, let's prevent like these kids from being born, right? Let's stop allowing factory farm cows to be bred, which is the same effect as stopping them from breeding, because we recognize that like these animals are being born for suffering, right? And vegans are very quick to point out that it is absolutely immoral that human beings are breeding animals with the express purpose of causing suffering to them. But it's like nature is breeding these types of animals who are having lots of children, is breeding them with the express purpose of them suffering, because it knows natural selective forces have made it do so, because it knows that most of them are going to suffer, right? Because only some of them are going to survive. That's why the principle is developed in the first place. So it's like in the same way that vegans can say it's horrible for humans to breed animals for them to suffer, it's like, again, the distinction between doing and allowing. Is it also immoral and cruel to allow animals to breed that are going to be bred for suffering?
Do you think what's also coming into play there is that idea that what's natural is good, and because it's nature, it's good, it's beautiful, we should let it happen? Yeah, and it seems to be such a prevalent view.
Yeah, but it's because it's like instinctive, right? Even the vegans who are like very quick to point out that we shouldn't be using this naturalistic fallacy, although that's probably the wrong term because that's a slightly different moral concept. But you know, an appeal to nature. Like you can't help but have these kind of instinctive feelings about certain things, like you know. If somebody, you know, meat eater or vegan or whoever is told to start taking an iron supplement or something, you might feel a bit weird about that. It's like the anti-vax crowd, they feel weird about vaccines because it is a weird thing to have a needle stuck into your arm and be injected with a pathogen. It's like, that's strange, right? But like, we allow our reason, our rationality to override that and say like, well, obviously this is something we should be doing anyway, but it doesn't mean that the instinct isn't there, you know? And I think the same thing applies here. It's like we kind of have this instinctual feeling that nature is how things ought to be.
Do you think there is any good reason why we should value nature intrinsically?
The only possible thing that I can see about it is that like we know we can garner a lot of like descriptive truths about nature. It's in the same way as kind of like what capitalism tells us about human nature. It's like it essentially tells us like what human nature does, right? It's like it's got a lot of descriptive power. Like there are certain things that we can learn about the natural state of affairs, the way that animals behave, the way that we behave naturally, that can inform our moral judgments. Like we could recognize that if naturally, if nature, if we saw that like in the history of human beings, there was like a lot of rape, and we could recognize that maybe like, you know, a tendency for sexual violence is part of like the human
nature's
code.
quite.
And so when we're trying to make a moral case to eliminate sexual assault from society, we can then take that into account, and we can kind of counteract it. And we know that that's something we need to take into account, right? But I think that like looking at nature and looking at how it like prescribes us to act is only useful in that kind of informative sense. I think that at any time that somebody is purely making an argument from appeal to nature is not making a serious moral case. I don't know if you see the same thing, like if you can think of any examples.
I can't think of
but it's always the unnatural argument that is invariably in the way of any moral progress. The gay rights movement, the interracial marriage movement, whatever it may be, like it's unnatural.
Do you think there could be a status quo bias as well?
Yeah, I mean that infects absolutely everything we do. Certainly so. But that doesn't just apply to like intervening in nature. That also just applies to everything we do. Like, you know, if someone wants to build a new tower in a city, people are probably going to be a bit iffy about it, even if it's going to be like good for them. It's, yeah, there's certainly that kind of bias. It's the same thing with intervening in the wild. In the wild, it's like people are going to be iffy about it, even if you can demonstrably show that it's going to benefit everybody.
I think this belief that nature is good is actually also prevalent in academia. I mean, wouldn't it be fair to say that a lot of conservation efforts?
Yeah, I have a feeling Alex O'Connor is going to be known in history as a famous philosopher, most likely. He's attractive, one. Two, put together. Three, he has quite a popular following. And yeah. Four, he's just overall smart, well-educated, goes to popular school and shit. So, yeah, he's probably going to be well noted in the future, I imagine. I came to liking philosophy because of him. So
Are based on the fact that because something is natural, it's therefore good.
Certainly so. I mean, it's certainly not prevalent in
hi,
like moral academia,
Marco.
and rightfully so. Like no serious moral intellectual who spent 30 years like
Hey,
really kind of studying ethics with
warrior.
a serious appeal to nature. Like it's just kind of unheard of. But you're right, like for the environmental movement, and this is why this guy, and it pains me that I've forgotten his name. This is why this guy makes this point about how, like, actually, I think that environmentalism is in conflict with veganism. It's just that people kind of haven't noticed yet, right? It's like that vegans aren't in conflict with environmentalists, even if veganism is in conflict with environmentalism. Like,
And Gary the Forgotten for all those
like, once we
reasons.
kind
Oh
of-
God,
yeah, once we
basically,
stop
yeah.
eating meat and animal products,
This Gary
the
doesn't
vegans
meet
and
any of those
environmentalists are like,
qualifications.
yes,
Yet
okay, and then the vegans are like, all right, let's do world
he's
animal suffering.
brilliant.
And it's just like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Hold on, and then it's just I
Well,
feel like there could be that conflict down the line.
When I talk to conservationists, it seems that they seem to be more concerned with the numbers of the species rather than the individual, the life of the individual.
But that's not how we should be doing ethics.
Right.
Surely we should be looking at ethics from an experiential basis. I mean, I think ethics is reducible to pleasure and pain. A lot of people criticize me, call it too simplistic, but I genuinely believe it. But whatever you think that ethics is reducible to, I think that it's an experiential phenomenon. We've largely agreed as a society when we look at issues like abortion, and we decide that the key issue is when the fetus starts feeling pain, when it becomes a human, when it's sentient, right? With animal rights, it's like, are plants sentient? All this kind of stuff. Like, people are kind of implicitly recognizing that what we care about is the ability to feel pleasure and pain. Well, pleasure
Neither
and pain
do I,
are,
man.
like, experiential by
But
definition,
unfortunately,
right?
probably will
It doesn't
be.
matter. Like, the only thing that makes it
Unless
worse
people
that two
put them
people
into like
suffering than
actual
one is that
books.
there's kind of more suffering being experienced, right? It's not that there's more suffering present. It's not like there's a higher number or anything like that. It's just because the amount of experienced pain is double, but it's still an individual.
I mean, it won't be like
experience,
forgotten.
Do you
It's
think
all,
there's a
anything on the
possibility that
internet
we
will
could get environmental
preserved,
groups to
but
shift their thinking from the species to the individual?
I'm not sure, because like environmentalism as a whole, I mean, it's not really a moral pursuit. I mean, you can become an environmentalist for moral reasons, but environmentalism itself is not an intrinsically moral pursuit. It
what's his
has to
name?
look
Like
at biosystems. It has to
man
look at
who
species.
made
Like,
the
it
term
can't really focus
primordialism.
on the individual,
Everybody
because
doesn't
that's
even
not
really
how
know
it
his
works,
term. He's
I
dead
think.
now.
Like, you can be an environmentalist in the sense, like, you can incorporate it. You can be like, well,
I don't remember.
there are kind of general moral standards of any kind of inquiry. It's like science or medicine has certain like ethical guidelines, right? Even though medicine is not itself like intrinsically an ethical thing, it's more of like a practical doctrine. It's obviously driven by an ethical drive to like reduce suffering. The same thing can be true of environmentalism. So like we could start establishing like, hey, we should be looking at ethics from the individual's perspective, and then the environmentalist might say, okay, so what can we do based, like, having that assumption and taking that into account. But I don't think like environmentalism itself can ever be an individualistic pursuit.
It just seems to me that the reason someone would care about the environment is because they care about the sentient beings on Earth.
I don't know if that's the case. Like, I feel like a lot of environmentalists kind of care about the Earth, right? They care about like,
they give the rock that we're living on intrinsic value, you mean?
I guess like you get a kind of, it's almost like a spiritualism around a lot of it. They talk in terms of like, Gaia, the Earth God. It's like it's alive.
He does have the best message. Gary knows what's up.
They're all part of this grand, like, and they kind of see value in that entire structure, rather than like, in the same way that an environmentalist doesn't necessarily care about an individual tree. Now, I've never seen an environmentalist like cry at a particular tree being cut down. it's like they care about trees, right? And that's again, and again, that might be complicated with the fact that some also care about that from a purely like global warming based perspective.
Sure.
But I mean, like those who just care about nature separate from that, it's like, yeah, they don't care about like a particular drop of water. They care about the river and the rivers.
It seems really sad that we could place higher value on a non-sentient object than on the conscious creatures who are feeling and suffering.
I was just thinking about that. I mean, it's like, it seems to me that a lot of the time environmentalism spends as much time thinking about how to save the trees as how to save the animals, right? And perhaps some people want to save the trees because that will save the animals. You know, people talk about habitat destruction, for instance. But you're right. I think if people are, because I don't want environmentalists to think that I'm trying to lump them here. I'm just saying it is possible. This is why I don't see it as an intrinsically moral pursuit, because it is possible to be an environmentalist, but care about it in that way, which I think even most environmentalists would recognize that that's a bad way to be doing it. But that's not because of the environmentalist principle. That's because of the kind of animal rights implicit principle. They can be doing that. And if they are, then the reason is surely because of the fact that they're not looking at ethics from an individualistic perspective.
So you're
People look
clear
at ethics
that
a lot of times from
you
this
suggest that
weird
it's a moral obligation to be
cosmic
vegan.
mind
Yes.
point
So
of view. I don't know why they do it.
do you
Doesn't
think
make
it's a
any
moral
sense,
obligation
but
to reduce
Anti-Dale
suffering of wild
Reformer
animals, or
looks
would you
at it
just
from
say
this
it's morally
weird
virtuous?
cosmic
I
mind
would say that, like,
metaphysics point of view, and
if
it's really
this
fucking
argument,
bullshit.
if it doesn't have
It's like, oh, the
a
metaphysics, man. And I'm like,
comeback,
what are you even talking
then
about?
I'd say that it probably is a moral obligation. Yes. The
The
difference
will.
is slightly
Don't
different.
you know
It's
the
kind of
will from
the same thing as like
Schopenhauer? And
charity.
I'm like,
People are often like, is it a
yeah,
moral
use
obligation
a silly
to
Billy.
give
There's no
charity
will.
which is virtuous?
There's no
And
universal
people say, well, you
mind
get into a
will.
bit of a problem when you
Bullshit.
take the logic to its
It's
conclusion, because
metaphor for
you should
DNA,
never
if
shave
anything.
your face, because the money that you spend on the razor could go to like buy a malaria net. And when is the facial hair ever going to be more important than that? And it's like, well, good point. But the difference is, like, in order to do absolutely everything to completely eliminate the problem of factory farming, what do we need of all individuals? Well, we need them to stop eating meat altogether, right? What do we need to eliminate poverty? Well, we need people to give a certain amount of their money. People calculated like how much needs to be given, and it's not an exact science, of course. But like, of an individual, if every individual were to give like a certain amount, then global poverty could be eliminated, I say. But like for veganism, in order to stop factory farming,
Doesn't Alex
it's
not
not
believe
enough
in moral
for everybody
obligations?
to cut
Not
down.
anymore.
Everybody has to stop
During this video,
entirely.
he might
It's not
have
the same
believed in
with,
moral obligations, but
with
he's
charity, which is why like it's difficult to talk about in terms of
anti-realist of
obligation. I think that you can say
sorts.
there is an
Oh,
obligation
he's
to
like
give
an
to charity
expression, a
to the extent
modist,
that's
or whatever you
applicable,
want to
and
call
that
it.
there's an obligation to try and normalize that in society.
We're just
Same thing's probably
expressing
true of this.
ourselves,
It's like,
man.
yeah, it's an obligation, but it's not an obligation in the sense of like, whereas
Like when
as
someone
a
gets
vegan,
raped, and
the
I'm like,
obligation
oh
is
boy,
to
that's
completely
not
boycott
free cash money. All I'm really saying is I
animal
don't like looking
exploitation.
at someone being
Like,
raped. Not that rape's
it's
actually
difficult
bad.
to kind of
Like,
do
yeah, like
everything
it's
you
just
can,
silly
because
shit in my
you could
opinion.
always be in the wild, like looking out for animals,
Sure,
trying to save them.
whatever.
Like if you consider it a moral obligation in that sense, then I think it's a shame. If, like as a society, I think
Right.
there's a moral obligation to
Yeah.
do something about it. Again, like I think that provisionally, based on the arguments that have been presented so far. But again, I'd love to be talked out of it, if not just because this is going to like take a lot of time to talk about and discuss and debate, and I'd love to be able to focus my efforts on factory farming. But if there's something that's causing more suffering, then it's probably something we need to be paying attention to.
Sure. So when I first became interested in reducing wild animal suffering, I came across this website by someone called Brian Tomasic. Don't know if you've heard of him.
That might be the guy that I was talking about earlier. I think that's the guy whose name I forgot. Yeah.
Okay.
Tomasic. I'm pretty sure that was it. Yeah.
So he's got this amazing resource, and I really recommend it. Everyone, I'm going to put the link in the description. It talks about how to reduce suffering, like practically speaking as well, what we can do.
Yeah, I'm sure it's him. I'm sure that's a nice little that's a nice little circle that's been
Yeah.
I'm sure that was the guy that I was reading this morning.
So even things like if it's raining, try not to walk on grass.
Yeah.
Right.
He was like try to avoid driving
when it's raining as well. Yeah, could injure.
Yeah, all that stuff's bullshit though.
And you know what I found
Insects
myself?
are better
Like, if I'm
off
walking to the shop and there's a patch of grass, I just walk around it.
Well, that's the thing, right? So like you might say it's an obligation as far as it's practical, in the same sense that like, if you see a homeless person on the street and you're walking past, maybe you could argue that it's not an obligation to like give them money
Hmm.
every time. But like, if their foot's in your way, it's probably an obligation to like step over it rather than just like stepping on their foot, right? Like,
Right.
even if you don't see kind of like trying to minimize the suffering of homeless people overall as a moral obligation in the sense of doing everything you can, you can at least see that it's not just virtuous, it's an obligation to not stand on them on the street. And it's the same thing here. It's like, you know, maybe you don't need to be out in the forest, you know, with your binoculars looking out for suffering animals, but like, if you're walking, if you're one of the colleges, I was walking with a friend who goes to St. Peter's College in Oxford, and in the entrance, like, you kind of walk down this path and then you take a left into the main entrance, and there's just like this track on the grass of where everyone just cuts the corner.
Hmm.
And I went to cut the corner, and he was just like, why does everybody do this? Like, it takes so little to just take that extra step. Now, he just, you know, wanted the grass because it kind of looks bad. But it's the point. It's like, is it really worth like that one saved step to like ruin this patch of grass? And the same thing would be true of like, you know, is it really worth like stepping on that grass, which could cause suffering?
Exactly.
And again, you're going to get
Yeah.